when you take these and you overlap the data as to what is happening and their reasoning for having these issues, it always, and I say always gently, I have yet to see it not come down to the opposite of one or more of these pillars, right? I don't feel like anyone sees me. I feel invisible. I don't
Yeah.
feel heard, and no one listens to me. I don't feel loved. No one loves me. I don't belong anywhere. I'm just floating around. I don't belong here, and I have no purpose, right? What am I doing? I'm not fulfilling any sort of purpose. And that's what I keep hearing in both of these adolescents and 40s and 50s year old women right now. And so we need to build this worth from the inside out instead of seeking it outside in, which is what the world is going to tell us all the time.
Hello and welcome, Kate Champion here, and that's the voice of Nellie Harden. Today on Living Big Mindfully, we are talking self-worth, self-esteem, and self-confidence. And these three things are foundational for our health and wellness for the long haul. Nellie is a wife, a speaker, author, and the mother of 4 daughters. And she knits together this lovely combination of biology and psychology to help people in all ages and stages of life build or restore a healthy sense of self-worth, esteem, and confidence from the inside out, which is key because in today's influencer culture, we are taking so much in from the outside, but these things really have to begin from the inside out. And she talks all about that. So whether you're a parent, a grandparent, or you are on your own quest to restore these vital components, get ready to listen and learn. Nellie starts out by sharing a little bit about her own journey, and then we jump in and she helps us understand the what, the why, and the how behind these vital components. Nellie shares her foundational 5 pillars of self-worth. She shares a framework that we can use with ourselves and the young people in our lives. And she packs this episode full of lots of actionable tips and strategies, all designed to help or restore this healthy sense of self-worth. She includes tips for communication skills, tips for self-exploration, and she has some strategies that you can actually begin to use today, regardless of where you are in your life or what has happened. Of course, Nellie wraps it all up with some powerful sage advice. In my years of clinical training and experience, this is actually the first time I've heard these often kind of fuzzy concepts presented in a way that makes so much sense. I learned so much. So thank you, Nellie. And I hope you too will listen and learn and take some of these concepts away and build this strong foundation. If you found this conversation helpful, please subscribe to the show and share it with a friend. And remember, you can find the episode with video on YouTube. YouTube is a great place to subscribe and leave your questions and comments. I do personally read and respond to everything. Finally, check out the show notes for links, books, and resources. And whether you're listening for the first time or a regular, please know I appreciate you, I support you, and I thank you for listening today. Okay, my friends, here's Nellie. Hello and welcome. Today I have Nellie Harden on the show, and I'm so excited to connect. Good morning, Nellie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me on the show.
You are welcome. You're welcome. We were just chatting about the kind of seasonal change, and that can be a thing for some people, that's for sure. So if you are going through some seasonal change, know that it is a thing and it's perfectly normal, and just hang in there and take care of yourself. So Nellie, tell us a little bit about you and your journey and how you got to doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, I think like many people where I am today, and I just had a birthday this week, so it's been a reflective week, and but I look back on where I am now and the work that I do, and it really just started from the beginning. And I grew up in a home. My dad passed away when I was super young. I was just 1 year old when he passed away, and it was just my mom and I. And then mom got remarried, had a couple more kids, my brother and sister, and I graduated early from school. And all that to say that there was a lot happening in my childhood. And I graduated high school early at 17 and went 7 hours away from home. And when you're doing that, you don't really have, I didn't really have that foundation of worth, esteem, or confidence. Now, I went into biology and psychology. That's what I studied, and that's what my background is in. And I would not, as a 17-year-old or 18 or 19-year-old, really have had the vocabulary, intellect, reflection ability at all to be able to say, I don't really have a foundation right now, right? You just go with it. And especially, I feel like, I graduated high school in 96 and then went on to college. And I feel like back then, even more so than now, you were just on this conveyor belt and passing these milestones as you go along. And then the conveyor belt just has a drop off that says, you're 18, good luck, right? And it drops off and you're just released out into the world, not necessarily prepared for, built, and launched out into the world. And so when that happened to me again early, I was 17. I just found myself chasing worth anywhere that I could find it because I didn't have an inside out understanding or knowing of my worth. So I was finding it and chasing it down in the world anywhere I could find it. It was maybe a grade or a group or serving or quote unquote good things, but good things can become toxic with bad intentions, right? And then even so, I had a roommate there. I roomed blind. I didn't know this young woman, and on the outside she seemed so confident, knew exactly what she was doing. So when my parents dropped me off and we waved goodbye and I turn around and there's this, little peppy blonde from Florida that's like, all right, time to party. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that seems like, but you seem to know what you're doing. So let's go. And it took me down this terrible, awful, no good, very bad rabbit trail of about only 8 weeks that completely dismantled anything I knew about myself as far as any identity that I had built or in a fragile way understood about myself. It was all dismantled. And what was left was honestly a train wreck of trauma in just 8 weeks of being dropped off and not having that foundation in college. And then I really just turned inward and I was being with just with myself, I was doing laundry when other people were out there, quote unquote having fun, etc. But that started a decades long trail of myself having to discover that I needed healing, really discover what I needed healing from and start and go through the healing process. And so in the midst of that, then I get married and we go through infertility, which is a whole other thing, right? And then we have
Yeah.
we have 4 daughters in 4 years. And so, the pendulum just kept swinging wildly from one side to the other. And there was just this moment when I was sitting there, my husband got really sick. We almost lost him and he was in heart surgery and I had four kids that were 4, 2, 2 and newborn. And I'm sitting there in a waiting room, unknowing if my husband is going to make it, this retelling of my own story, losing my dad so young,
Yeah.
couldn't help but replay in my head. And I just realized we have such a finite, short time in this high impact zone, high influence zone as parents to this younger generation. What am I going to do with it? Right? What can I do with it? How can I use it to the best of their life, abilities and the best of my abilities? And that's really where things started to percolate and change. And like I said, I had been working in biology, psychology, family discipline work for a while, and but it really started developing after that moment that I had, and it has changed faces one way and the other and different things, but now I'm just to the point that I have had this decades long of experience both inside my home, outside my home, in our community, in our world, and I'm really out there helping people that are influencing and impacting the next generation of young women, be it as parents, as teachers, as coaches, youth leaders, you name it, but also on the same build this foundation of worth, esteem, and confidence before they leave home, so they're equipped for the world. But in the same token, helping women like myself who either didn't have this built in their childhood or did and had what was there wiped away by some sort of trauma or drama. And so that is the work that I do today, but it really has been a culmination of my entire life.
Yeah, so the lived experience, obviously, and then you've got the education and the background and the psychology piece, and yeah, you've been through a lot. So I'm just curious about a couple of things, if I can
Mhm.
ask you, just
Yeah,
two
please.
that come to my mind. First of all, that story, right, of being dropped off of college at 18. I mean, that is happening, I don't know, 75% of the time, right? Every fall, right? We get this massive influx of these young adults, and not only females, males too, obviously. Then they're
Right.
packed off to the dorm. I mean, the same happened to my daughter, right? She did the same thing. And we drop them off and we hope that they have the skills and they hope that they have the self-esteem and the self-worth, um, the self-leadership, right? But many
Mhm.
times they don't. So that is a really common story. So my heart goes out to that young person. That must have been a really difficult time. And the second thing that comes to my mind is I know that you focus on females, but what about males, right? Because I think they also struggle desperately with some of these things, self-esteem, self-worth, confidence. Have you looked at males that much, or is your focus on females?
I have definitely, and I've done work with males and females. I work primarily with females, honestly, just for the most basic reason of I am one, I'm raising some, and that is what I know. And I cannot tell you how many people after I do, talks on stage or I'm at some sort of conference or something, and they're like, "Where is, the information for young men?" And I said, so much of what I do is just about, parenting, methodology and
Hmm.
principles and things like that. So it applies to both. But brain development wise, it's so different between a young woman and a young man. And then within that difference, within all of, these young women, there's differences within them. And so it's so broad to deal with everybody. So I wanted to hone in and be excellent at, one gender here with young women and women in general. And so it's just what I know. And I'm really hoping and praying, in fact, one day that I can partner with a gentleman that can come alongside and we can do both male and female of this. I think that would
Yeah,
be beautiful. It's down the road.
got it,
But
got it.
you are so right. There is a lot of expression of, the self-worth and the self-esteem issues and confidence and self-led discipline in both males and females. But I happen to work primarily with young women. And I think a great example of that is a study that just came out, and I was writing on it last week in a study that came out about what happened during the COVID shutdown with brain development. So there was neuro labs out on the West Coast that were doing brain MRIs, in order to just test maturation of the brain. And they started in 2018. Well, then everything got shut down. They were going to do it every 2 years. So they used the same data, the beginning baseline data that they got in 2018, and they switched the focus of the study to see what has the COVID shutdown done for the maturation of these teen brains. And it was 160 kids between 9 and 20. And it was just so interesting and profound to me. And this is why I love biology and psychology, right? Because the
Yeah,
biology is the mechanical pieces all coming together, but how does that then express itself in the psychology that's happening? It's
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
fascinating. But what was found was that the cerebral cortex and the lining on the outside of the brain is thick, and then it gets thinner with age. And what they found is that young men had aged 1.4 years, but young women had aged 4.3 years. And it was a significant difference, not only in just the thickness, but where that happened. And in a male brain, it had happened in only two areas, both in the occipital lobe, and it was like distance differentiation and face recognition were affected. In the female brain, it was in over 30 areas of the brain that were affected. So essentially, in every lobe, every hemisphere. And so essentially, it was so much more. And that's why I think it's so important to look at them in a separate way and understand, the female versus the male and how
Yeah.
that's expressed biologically and psychologically.
And
So,
I appreciate that. I mean, they are different, right? I mean, this,
yeah.
you know, as Dr. Stacy Sims says, females are not small men, right? So
Yes.
we are absolutely very different neurologically, biologically, hormonally. So I appreciate that. So let's dive in a bit. Let's talk about first of all, these words get mixed up, right? Again, I'm a therapist, I hear it all the time. Like, what is self-esteem? What is self-worth? How are they the same, similar? How are they different? So let's start with a little bit of a high level basics. Help us understand the difference between, or not maybe the difference, what is self-worth? What is self-esteem?
Hmm.
How are they similar? How are they different?
And that is so true. I feel like, you make a pretty picture and put some words on it and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah." And they, popular culture can mix these things up. So, really, this foundation that we're talking about, and it's worth, if you look at it like a three-tiered cake, worth is on the bottom, and it is broad and big, and it is required for self-esteem, and those two in that order are required for confidence and culminate with self-led discipline at the top. But so your self-worth, it's really broken down into five pillars, and it is, am I worthy, right? Am I worthy? And the five pillars within that are to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to belong, and to have purpose. And what I find fascinating is there is, a crisis happening amongst our, adolescent young women and men today, too. But this crisis, and also, there's a crisis happening amongst 40s and 50s year old women as well. And when you take these and you overlap the data as to what is happening and their reasoning for having these issues, it always, and I say always gently. I have yet to see it not come down to the opposite of one or more of these pillars, right? I don't feel like anyone sees me. I feel invisible. I don't
Yeah.
feel heard, and no one listens to me. I don't feel loved. No one loves me. I don't belong anywhere. I'm just floating around. I don't belong here, and I have no purpose, right? What am I doing? I'm not fulfilling any sort of purpose. And that's what I keep hearing in both of these adolescents and 40s and 50s year old women right now. And so we need to build this worth from the inside out instead of seeking it outside in, which is what the world is going to tell us all the time.
I'm just going to pause you there because that is so true and so profound. I want to take a breath. I want to just say that again, right? That where it has to start, where this worth building has to start. Just say that again, please.
Yeah, it has to absolutely be built inside out and not outside in. We need to stop seeking it out in the world. And it inherently, if you look at these five pillars of worth, it inherently tells you what you need to do in order to build that worth. You need to see, how am I seen? And it needs to go. I mean, I am a Christian woman, so for myself, it starts with spirit and then self and then world, right? And it needs to be an inside out process. And I need to know when I get up in the morning and the entire world is quiet and it is just me and my journal, or me and my space, my room, maybe I'm meditating or what have you. I am worth my voice. right? My voice is worthy of being heard and I am worthy of being seen. I am loved. I am inherently loved, right? No matter what happens today, I am loved and I have purpose. So, what am I going to do? And, I want people to wake up in the morning and say, what can I do to bring light to the world today? What can I do to help the world today or help the people around me that are in the world today? I do not want people waking up, which is what is happening so often, epidemic levels, and saying, how is the world going to define me today? What is the world going to say that I am today? No, you say, this is what I am. The world doesn't tell you what you are.
Yeah, and what's so beautiful about that is that you can sit in that worth or that truth, or I mean, whatever word you want to put in that, you can, because that's an energy, right? That's a feeling, right? To really feel solid in that worth, right? That I do have a voice, I can be heard, I do have purpose or agency, I am loved, I do belong. Um, that that sitting in that like a core, it becomes an anchor, right? And
Absolutely.
whatever, I mean, we're going to get knocked off our perch because that's life, but whatever's happening around us, we can still hold that core of worth, right? It becomes like you said, a pillar. It becomes an anchor. It kind of becomes a cornerstone. And I believe that you're right. There is an epidemic lack of that,
Yeah,
I believe.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I
I see
picture
it
it
all the
like
time.
the what you hold on to in the storm, right? The storm can be all around you, but you hold on to this tree deep, deep, deep roots, right? And
Yeah.
you will be safe because you have that. And it's something else that you need to understand. So below, if you look at this foundation of worth, esteem, and confidence, below that are these understandings that you have of yourself. And if you are someone that's influencing the next generation down, this is, or several, or what have you, these are understandings you need to have about that person too, is where are they, biologically? If you said earlier, women are not just small versions of men. Another common mistake that is made is that teenagers or adolescents are just small versions of adults, and that could not be further from the truth
That's so
biologically.
true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the more we can understand where people are biologically, the better grace and understanding that we can give them and help them develop better, connect better, have better neural pathways in their brain development, especially during the malleable time of adolescence, right?
Yeah.
So understanding the biology, the psychology, what is their personality like? Our family, I have four daughters. And we drove down to Florida this past summer and we spent the time all talking together as we do a lot of road trips with the six of us. And we were doing all the personality tests and going through our strengths and our weaknesses and, what holds true and what's a little, but we were having these discussions in order to go deeper and get to know one another, even on a deeper level. And my daughters are 15 to 19 years old right now, but we've done this for years and they have changed. My husband and I haven't changed. We're adults. We're more developed, but they're still in a very changing under construction time. And so it's really worth it to get to know them over and over and over again by staying connected. So biology, psychology, and then where are they in their faith? Do they think, this is the be all end all? Are they answering to a higher power? Right? And then culture. Culture is always shifting. It is a shifting sand. That's why we can't stand on it for truth. Absolutely. But what are they experiencing when they're leaving, and going out the doors, when they're turning on the TV, what friends are talking about or coming at them with? And so we need to keep our pulse on those biology, psychology, faith, and culture pieces for each of those people and for ourselves as well. And then we build, the worth, esteem, and confidence on top of that.
I love that model. I love that kind of stacking it like a cake, right? With the heaviest solid layer underneath of the worth, and then kind of building and how they stack on each other. I love that model. That's really powerful. So my next question is, what if you've kind of haven't? So what if you're in I mean, again, that's my demographic. I work a lot with women, 50, 60, and I can't tell you how many people I come in. They the kids have left, right? And they're back
Hmm.
in kind of trying to figure out their purpose and what's next. And there does often, I often hear of an emptiness. I often hear of, it's often a time where a lot of the grief and loss comes up, right? Because
Yeah,
they really haven't had maybe the time or the bandwidth or the energy to kind of process some of the earlier stuff. And a lot does come up around self-worth, like not good enough, not all the nots, right? Not
right.
lovable, not good enough, not heard, not this. What about building, right? No, so in childhood we build. What about restoring, right? What about if we haven't had a great foundation? It hasn't been horrible, but hasn't
Yeah.
been solid. What about rebuilding that later in life? Let's talk about that for a moment.
Well, an exercise I really encourage everyone to do is, and I walk several people through this, is really walk down with or sit down with those five pillars and ask yourself, let's just take scene, for example, right?
Yeah,
When is a time in your life that you have absolutely felt seen, right? Like I feel like people see me, right? And that could be I feel like they understand me, or you walk into a room and they're like, "Oh, there she is," right? It could be only a moment of your life, but you felt seen. And I mean, this sounds silly, but for some reason, the little girl in Forrest Gump comes to mind, right? Because she was a little girl, if anyone has seen Forrest Gump, that she did not have a foundation built in her childhood at all, right? And then it ricocheted and avalanched the rest of her life after that, right? And I just remember sitting in the tree with Forrest and saying, "I just want to be a bird and fly far, far away," right? She just wanted to escape that, but Forrest saw her. So when she's looking back at her childhood, yes, it was high 90s percentage of terrible, but there was a moment, there was one person, there was some moments that somebody saw her. And then dive into that. How did that make you feel and what did that help you know, right? How did that make you feel and what did that help you know within that moment of being seen? And then work on developing more of those things. So maybe it was just going with that example, right? There was this person that truly saw me, and we were sitting one on one, right? Well, maybe I need to meet some more people with experiences as I have. Maybe you find a support group. Maybe you find an adventure group, right? Maybe you go out and whatever your interests are. Maybe it's arts or what have you, but you find people out there and you create those intimate, one-on-one small group setting relationships and grow to into a place that you can feel seen. So you're putting action toward your intent based on when you know that you felt seen other times in your life.
yeah. I love that kind of going back to childhood, right? Going back and trying to find those, I call them those little glimmers, right? That little glimmer
Hmm.
of hope, that little glimmer of love, that little glimmer of, when I work with purpose, right? Sometimes I go back, so what were you before school and before all the mess? What were you really interested in? What were you really curious about? What really kind of attracted your attention, right? So, and then picking up some of those glimmers and picking up some of those threads, and now let's bring it forward.
Right.
Now let's go back to that. Let's nurture that a little bit, like you're nurturing a flame, and
Yeah.
hopefully in time you build that muscle and it gets a little bigger and bigger and bigger.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
And that goes into, and I apologize, I didn't answer your question earlier because we just talked about worth, but I'm sorry, not confidence, self-esteem, right? So that is the second layer on top of worth. And like I said, you must have worth in order to have esteem, because esteem truly is value and appreciation of self. And you can't value yourself if you don't know you're worthy. You can't appreciate yourself if you don't know that you are worthy. And really, what that layer comes down to is trust. It's trust in self. And that comes down to discerning and disciplining your thought cycle. And there's an entire exercise that I work through with people in order to, you and I and everyone on this planet, when we're making a decision or going throughout life, it always follows the same cycle. So we need to be able to utilize that cycle for our good instead of just letting it go haywire. And that cycle being thoughts, feelings, decisions, actions, results, right? It everything always follows that, whether it's a split second decision or something you've been, going over and rattling in your head for a while. But we can use that cycle to our advantage. And, the world will tell you everything is based on feelings, and it's really not. We have a lot more uh, uh um control and effort and things toward our feelings than we give ourselves credit for, because everyone's like, oh, it's just how you feel, it's just how you feel, it's just how you feel. Well, we really get to choose how we are feeling. And a perfect example of that is, I'm a married woman. If I am, out and about, I certainly don't act the same or pursue the same or feel the same as I did when I was single versus when I am married, right? And so, whereas, if a attractive, man came up to me ages ago, I've been married for over 2 decades now, but if that happened before, I'd be like, yeah, let's see where this goes. And you could start to develop feelings. And now it's like, no, that's not where we are. He's a friend, he's great, and I have my husband. And that's just such a basic,
Great
um,
example.
yeah, example right there of how we really do have control over so much more of our feelings versus, I mean, you hear the news. I work in schools, and everything is like, well, it's just how I feel. So that's how it is, right? It's like, well, also, I have kids. They drive me absolutely nuts sometimes. And how I feel would lead to an action that I could get arrested for sometimes.
Yeah,
But I hold it back. And where do I hold it back? I hold it back at the thought, right?
yeah,
I hold it back
yeah.
at the thought and I dismiss the thought. And, there's so going through that, building trust in yourself is value and appreciation, but you have to have worth. And so just to give you some context as to where this is building to, in that second layer.
Yeah, no, I love that. I often say, you're waiting in line in the grocery store, right, and there's somebody in front of you and they're taking forever. And and part of me wants to just say, come on, hurry up, what are you doing? But I don't, right? I can self-regulate, right? We can call that
Exactly.
whatever. I can feel the feelings, I can feel the impulse, right, to be rude or be impatient. And then I can also say, okay, just right?
Right.
So for me, it's like level one and level two. Like level two, I can feel it in the body, I can feel the impulse, I can hear the grumbling. But level one, right, my frontal cortex, right, I can say to myself, okay, just relax, take a breath, blah blah blah. Right, I can talk myself through it. I can talk myself through it, and I think that's a really powerful skill to have. And thank goodness we all have that, right? We
Yeah.
all have, I believe we all have that ability,
We
to be able
do.
to,
And so
yeah,
many people don't know they have it though. And that's where your work and my work and so many others come in too.
yeah. And I think also that builds that every time you can do that, that also builds that foundation of confidence, right? You can now have
Yes.
confidence that you can kind of control yourself and self-regulate in all of these situations, whether it's traffic or the grocery store, kids or whatever, right? We can have these impulses, and at the same time, we can kind of go through this decision tree, right? Do I do this? Do I not do this? Do I need to punch that person in the face, or can I just sit down and relax and be okay? You make some great
Absolutely.
points.
And that's why confidence is the top tier right there, because you need to be able to build up to that. And confidence being a true belief in self, right? And I look at it like a bridge, a conflict bridge, and you're going over, you're standing on one side of the bridge, you see the issue ahead of you and you want to resolve and get to the other side. But you need to know that you're worthy of going through that. And And then you need to trust yourself and value and appreciate yourself enough to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to start heading that way. And then the belief in self is we're going to do it and we're going to get to the other side. And that other side, you need to know, might not be exactly what you envisioned success to be when you started, but that's okay because you got to the other side. And every pathway to success is paved with failure. And so, and some degrees of failure. And so failure is a good thing, which is another adjustment that we need to make
Yeah.
in the psyche, right there. Just like, the words that we talked about earlier, and just like the idea of success, right? What is success to, in America or what have you, is not necessarily what success, true personal success is. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why
Yeah.
you worth esteem and then the confidence and you get over and have resolve on the other side.
Yeah. And again, it's a beautiful model. I've done a lot of school, right? I've done a lot of school, a lot of ton of education up to doctoral level, etc. But I honestly haven't had it broken down so eloquently in that kind of cake model. But it
Mhm.
makes so much sense. So really,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm learning a lot today. I'm really hoping listeners are learning a lot today. So what about I love concrete kind of tips and
Yeah.
strategies. So let's look at some concrete tips for that younger age, right?
Hmm.
You know, elementary and then into teen, and then let's look at some tips and strategies for older, right? That older demographic that you
Yeah.
talked about, the 40, 45, 55.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
you could kind of help give listeners some concrete things that they can take away today.
Well, as an adolescent, one thing I cannot recommend enough, and especially as, an adult in their life that is helping, because I assume that it would be who is listening today, is to stay connected because it is really easy to think that you quote unquote know your child when they're 6, 8, right? You've spent so many waking hours with with this small child, and then you're like, I know them. I know their character. Yes, you do, but they're also about to undergo a huge brain under construction time. And so you need to stay connected. And anyone that has had an adolescent, how they are at 11 is different than how they are at 12, 13, or next week, right? And so it's very important to stay connected. And I recommend one-on-one time every single week. And I mean, so my husband, we have 4 kids. My husband and I, every Monday and Thursday, we have one-on-one time with our kids. And it is one parent with one child. And then the next week it changes. So it's not always with mom or always with dad, right? Because you have different relationships with your kids. And then I also am a leader of a youth community in our area. And then I work with people here and abroad too, but I make sure to have one-on-one time in order to get to know these young women and who they're becoming, the struggles they are facing, sharing in their joys. But also, one of the things that you can do in that time is give them an allowance to speak into your life, which is, so the one-on-one time is one layer, and then an allowance to speak into your life is another layer there. And what
So
I
give me an
mean,
example of, yeah, please
yeah.
flesh that out. Yeah. What is that?
What I mean by that is going back to those 5 pillars of worth, right? Seen, heard, love, belong, purpose. Well, if you show up in that time and you say, as the adult, right? Yeah, that's so great about you. I'm having a struggle right now, and this is something that's going on with me. What do you think I should do about that? Right? What would be some of your advice for me? Because it is so rare that a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or what have you can speak honestly and speak truth and speak wisdom because they have it. We need to
Yes,
give
they
them a lot
do.
more credit than
Yeah.
the world today gives them. And they can speak that into an adult's life. And it just means the world because they are heard, right? Oh, my words matter for this,
Yeah.
40, 50-year-old man or woman, whatever that is. Oh, my ideas matter. Oh, I belong here because they need me, right? They are showing that they are interested and need me in here. So I belong here, right? And they truly cherish me. And so it's just so many layers in there for them to speak into your life. And I will say unfortunately in our community, we had a young woman who was just 11 years old that passed away last week and went to her funeral. And her best friend was this young man, and he had walked through her for the last year that she was sick, walked by her side. And the the talk that he gave as a sixth grade young man at that funeral was it was the most impactful thing for the entire 2 hours that it was. And everybody was just hanging there on his every word and was just so impressed with him and the wisdom that he was able to share through this hardship. And it just gave everyone a sense of, wow, if I have an issue, I'm going to go to Miles. Miles is going to be able to help me. And
Well,
and we just need to give them a lot more credit than we do. They're not, quote unquote, just kids, right? They are growing into adults, right? We are not in the job of raising kids. We're raising people, and we need to give them that respect and space in order to grow and thrive as well. So that would be
yeah,
something I would really recommend for the
yeah,
younger.
yeah, yeah. So in my therapist brain, right? So I love that, but I do want to push on him just for a second because I want to make something clear.
Yeah.
I love inviting a younger person to kind of speak into your life, but I want to caveat that it it has to be an appropriate ask, right?
Oh, yes.
So
Yes.
let's set some boundaries around that because it
Okay. Yes.
I don't want to yeah, let's I think you're picking up what I'm laying down. So let's set some
Yes.
boundaries around that. Okay.
Okay, so you want it to be parallel to their experiences that they're having right now. So, say they're in fifth grade, right? Fourth, fifth grade, and they're having some of the FOMO issues, some of the I'm being left out issues, some of the they made me feel bad issues. You then can come in with your experiences and be like, when I walked into the room the other day when I was going to my business meeting, I didn't feel like anyone saw me. And it just made me feel, really bad. And I just wanted someone to say hello, right? And it just made me feel a little lonely. So I have another meeting tomorrow. What do you think I should do? Right. And so make sure. Thank you for bringing that up. That your experience that you're trying to get them to speak into is an experience that's parallel to them, because what does that turn into then? It turns into them being able to coach and guide themselves in their own situations. And so that's where we want to go.
No, I love that. So thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
I really
Yes.
appreciate that. Really appreciate that. So we've looked at the kind of teen-ish. Now,
Yeah.
what about let's fast forward. Let's look at, again, 45, 55,
Yeah.
60. What about that kind of demographic?
Well, I honestly think one of the best things that you can do for anybody is to journal. And I say that because of many reasons. And some people are like, oh, I hate journaling. I would never
Right.
want to do that. Right. But hear me out. Okay. So in your head, you have so many things swirling around all the time, and it can just feel so like a cloud that you cannot grasp, right? And you have all of these partial truths or these things that you have manifested as true that aren't actually true, but they feel like it up there because they're just swimming around. You can't catch them, and it's like a cloud. So when you slow down and you actually make them go from your head all the way through your hand onto paper, you can look at that and say, is that actually true? Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I was working with someone not too long ago that she was just convinced, she was like, "Oh, my teenager hates me. She just hates me," right? And she was coming from this place of the my teenager just keeps yelling at me all the time, my coworkers, and everything is just bad. Everything is bad, everything is bad. And then I just had her write that down and look at that truly. Does she really hate me? No, she doesn't
Yeah.
hate me, right? She is, or her teenager to her is speaking through fear, speaking through shame, speaking through, all of these experiences that she's having, and she doesn't want to come. And so it comes out really harshly, but that's not hate, right? And so when you journal something, and I'm not saying write paragraphs or, write all of these things or every detail or whatever, but get it out of your head and put it on paper so you can really see if it's true or not. And a great exercise to do is just a brain dump, right? It doesn't have to make sense. There doesn't have to be periods. It can be like the adolescent's texting language today, right? It just just purge it out and get it down and out of your head, and you will have so much more freedom to think in inside of you throughout the rest of the day. And as many times as you need to do that, do that. Just purge, brain dump, get it down there, and then you will be able to think more clearly. And whatever action steps need to be done, right? Like this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Okay, now I see it all on paper. Okay, now I can come up with an action plan. Because today, with as much information as coming into us, which I honestly, our brains have not been well equipped for all of this information coming in that we have
Absolutely. Yeah.
constantly, whether
Yeah.
it be, just being outside or what have you. So, journaling, aka just getting it down and putting it on paper, would be one. And another just really simple thing I would recommend is to get out in nature and ground yourself every day if you can.
Big
So
one.
take your shoes off, be out in the grass, just listen, right? Just try and clear your mind and write it down.
And I'd add another step to that. So I'm big on the outdoors, big on connecting with nature. I'd add another step to that. And as you're doing that, as you're grounded in the ground and you're looking up at the big sky, just know that you are connected to that, right? You are a
Yeah.
part of that. So that really
Mhm.
helps over time, right? These things, again, there's no hack, there's no quick fix. This all takes work, this all takes time, this all takes effort. But no, every time you go out there, you ground, you're looking at the big sky, just know that you are literally connected to all of that, right? You know, the air that you're breathing in and breathing out, right? The oxygen that the trees are making. I mean, you are literally a part of this massive, bigger, amazing whole. And if you
Yeah.
can begins to build a little muscle around that, right? That kind of helps with that love thing, right? I'm not loved
Yes.
versus I'm loved. I'm not connected versus I'm connected. I'm not
Yes.
don't have purpose versus I'm part of the much bigger whole, right? So that can really begin to move the needle on some of those lack of self-worth, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. My oldest daughter went on an expedition between her sophomore and junior year, I think, of high school.
Mm,
And when she was on this expedition, it was just four young women and a leader. And uh, it was a trust exercise for a parent, let me tell you, because I dropped her off, and they're like, you won't know exactly where we're going, but they will be safe, and the leader will have a phone if anything happens. I'm like, and so they turned, and every time they do this, it's different. But this time they turned out to go up the North Carolina coast, and they got in kayaks and kayaked all the way, back down. And this was like tents in the kayaks and everything. When it was tired, you pull off and you build on the beach. Like it was an intense experience. But one of the things that they did every day, which I just loved, and well, I loved the entire thing except for sharks that were trailing her in the kayak one day. But one of the things that they did is when they got up in the morning, they would go and sit in nature wherever they were at that point, and you had to sit there, and I forget, it was like the critical something point, critical nature point, let's call it, but it was something else. But anyway, you sat there, and it was about 24 minutes. You sit still in nature, and then you become a part of it, right? Everything stops being afraid of you, and you just kind of incorporate into your surroundings instead of being this intruder in it. And they were able to do this every day, and the grounding and just the peace that came with that was so overwhelming. Just me even hearing about it at her wrap up session was just so powerful, right? And it's just critical nature point, right? You're just sitting in there and you become a part of it and understanding it instead of an intruder in the space. So I thought that was
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful. So, Nellie, you have shared so much amazing information. I'm so grateful that we were able to connect today. Before I ask you the final question, the sage advice question, is there anything else you want to share or add that you want to express?
Just I want to echo something you said, it's never too late and it's never the end of the journey until it's the end of the journey, right? And so give yourself grace and always give yourself room to grow, whether you are 6'15", 56, 96. There's always space to grow. If you are breathing, then you have work to do and purpose within yourself and for the world. And so, yeah, just give yourself that grace and understanding and peace and grow forward. So I would
Yeah,
definitely
I
say
love
that.
that. And get help, right? Don't if
Yeah.
you are struggling, don't be alone, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, or you're, in that kind of, 50, 60, 70. If you are struggling or a little bit stuck, get some help. It doesn't have to be a therapist, but get a like-minded other, like you said, connect with a group of kind of like-minded people.
Yeah.
Just you don't have to go it alone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not alone in this. So reach out, get help. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So thank you. What is, your sage advice question? If you have one piece of sage advice for listeners today about living intentionally, what
Mm.
would that be? What would that be for you?
Well, I'm going to share with you something that I literally say in my house every single day to my daughters, one or more of them, and honestly to myself too. And that is discipline yourself so others don't have to. And it's just really important to get up. Yeah, I think you use the phrase you'll be, knocked off your perch at some point or another. And that is very true, but you can discipline yourself to get back on it or discipline yourself to not fall on it or fall off of it in that way that time, right? So just get up and take ownership. Sorry, excuse me. Take ownership of your life and what you want to do and what you want to grow toward and have disciplined steps in order to get there and be in that growth. And so yeah, discipline yourself so others don't have to.
Love that. I'm really big on discipline versus motivation, right? I actually think
Yes.
discipline is much, much more powerful and much more I think we can, yeah, maybe that's another show, right? With discipline versus kind of motivation. So I love that, Nellie. Thank you so much. So if listeners want to connect with you, learn more about you, where can they find you?
You can find everything on nellieharden.com. I like to keep it simple. Our social communities are on there. You can have me join you in your inbox every Friday. And we have free downloads and master classes and all sorts of things that you can find on there, as well as how to work with me.
Fantastic. And I will be sure, obviously, to put all those good things in the show notes. So you can check her out and connect. And again, if you're feeling a little stuck, then maybe a few coaching sessions might be really, really powerful, I would imagine. So yeah, check Nellie out. So thank you, Nellie. It's been an absolute pleasure. I have personally learned so much today, so I'm sure listeners have too. So again, thank you. I appreciate you. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate you and your time. Remember that I do love to hear from listeners, so connect with me at katechampionauthor.com. Grab your free hiking guide, share your favorite episode with a friend, and subscribe to the show. Until next time. Hey, me again. Just a reminder, this podcast should not be considered professional advice. It's also not a substitute for mental, physical, or any other healthcare related treatment. For any questions about your condition and or concerns, please contact a fully licensed healthcare professional. Thank you.